Hi everyone, welcome back to Coffee and Conversation. We are going to talk about effective communication. So today I'm with one of our co-founder, Natasha. She is going to be discussing with me on the topic of effective communication. So to know more, please keep on listening to this episode and let's dive into the topic. So hi Natasha, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm good. How about you, Esther?
I'm doing well. How is university?
Good. I'm having semester break, so yeah, nothing to do for with my university currently.
That's fun. I'm sure that we are going to dive into a lot of interesting things today. What do you think about the topic of communication in general?
Personally, I think communication is quite important for a lot of things. For organization, to talk with your friends, for work, everything's required communication. So communication is an important soft skills that you need to have.
Definitely agree with what you said. So, do you want to introduce a little bit about yourself? Basically, normally what I do is when I host a podcast, I would invite the guests and I would ask them to say three things about themselves.
Um, okay, so hi everyone. My name is Natasha. I'm the co-founder of Ada, in charging the PR and social media. And yeah,
That's it. That's everything that's interesting about you.
I joined couple of organization in my university. I'm the president of IndoJCUS as well as the previous head of PR and marketing in student council.
Wow, so we have a talented star today in our podcast. We're very excited to be again discussing about the topic of effective communication. So I see that you've mentioned a lot of your position as a president of a community organization. There must be a lot of communication there going on. So, what is your general impression on the idea of communication?
Mm, I think communication is a very key factor during meetings. Very required in order for everything to work out. Since especially nowadays, meetings are held through Zoom and online. There there's always some miscommunication that may occur here and there. That's why every time you say something, then you have to make sure that the other party understand it to make sure that the communication is effective lah.
I totally agree, but what do you think is effective communication though? Because I think communication is just, when you talk 101, but how do you think communication can be effective? Because I think effective communication doesn't happen that as often as we think it does.
To have effective communication, I never actually thought about how to have effective communication. It's just that however I work with, I ensure that both sides understood each other. Like for example, by asking that, do you understood about it, or have you understood it, or do you want me to repeat myself in other words?
Okay, so that's a form of building up effective communication, right?
Yeah.
So, what are some things that you would want to, like what you've mentioned about your position? So, do you mind sharing a little bit about your encounterment with effective communication?
Mm, there's quite a lot especially during meetings when mostly I'll do the talkings, right, and the others were just listening. So I have to ensure that every in the middle of what I say, just ask them, do you guys understand about this? Do you guys need anything that I need to repeat? So that not don't wait until like you finish talking for 30 minutes, then you just ask them, okay, so guys, do you understand, right? So I think it's better if you slowly talk to them and asking them.
So follow up the
Yeah.
question. I totally agree, especially with the production, our production, ADA production. As if some of you guys don't know, we have a team, we have a main team, consists of four independent and feisty women, and sometimes working with feisty women is hard. It can get very tough. Do you agree?
Yeah.
And I think the four of us, one thing that we all have in common is that we're pretty stubborn people. What do you think, Nat? Do you have nothing to say about our stubbornness?
No.
So we are in the process of building and developing our community digitally. And being able to do that is a bit hard because obviously if there are a lot of personality that comes together and if it clashes, it clashes. And sometimes it's just a little bit out of our control. Do you think so?
Yeah, because of our stubbornness, sometimes like we just trust ourselves more, I guess.
Oh yeah, I think so. I think it's ego too, don't you think?
Yeah. That's why it's very difficult for us to like to accept other people's opinion, I guess.
And I think with ADA production, we have a lot of opinion, yeah.
Yeah.
As a team, I think we have this, how do I explain this? We have such a mixture of women with passion, but it's all different backgrounds, yeah, Nathya.
Yeah.
It's different backgrounds and different knowledge, and when we all come together, sometimes it just doesn't work because of its differences, right?
True.
How do you think we've encountered this so far, Nat? I want to know your opinion since we have basically welcomed you to the team, being part of, well, being a co-founder. First of all, you have to acknowledge your position.
I mean, yeah, being a co-founder is a big position, and it's my first time. But yeah, I hope for the best for Ada. How about you?
Thanks for considering to ask me. So I think, well, what do you want to ask me about? That's a bit too general.
What's your future hope for Ada?
Oh, in effective communication or in general?
In effective communication and in general?
Oh, that's interesting. I think so far, um, actually, it's kind of tricky. I think so far, in terms of effective communication, we've done it pretty well to a certain extent. Do you think?
Yeah.
I think it's because we're all very straight up. Do you think that too?
Yeah, I think we're all too straight up.
I think there's more. Sometimes I think there's more over explaining because we're all very straight up people. What do you think, Nat?
Cause everyone is different. Like the straight up is different. Some are straight up with emotional. Some are straight up with no emotion.
That's
So
really funny.
yeah, you just have to, in terms of that emotional straight up and not emotional straight up also lead to a communication.
A nonverbal communication.
Yeah, cause like you have to each understand each other to make sure that it becomes an effective communication. Don't take it too hard.
That's true. I'm gonna be very honest. I think this is not really. I think this is not that effective to a certain extent of explanation. But the people that I'm working with in ADA, like Natasha, Anushka, and Chloe, the three of our other co-founder, they're all earth signs. Like I think this has nothing to do with horoscopes, but in a way it does. Because I feel like I work so well with earth signs in general because they're the most straight up people in my opinion. What do you think, Nat? Do you think you're straight up?
Yeah, I think I'm quite straight up with no emotion.
I also think you're straight up with no emotion.
I think it's more towards personality.
Do you think it's a little bit of the different personalities or how? Do you mind elaborating that?
Personality? I mean, you can take personality tests. to know your personality, whether if you're have more towards thinking or emotional.
So you think yours is more towards
Thinking.
you think that has a positive outcome on the way we communicate in our production?
I think yes, because like with thinking, sometimes you have more opinions which you can share with other people, and sometimes different opinions matters because like one opinion may be better than the other that other people does not think about it.
And how does that have been effective in our production specifically?
Gaining new opinion. When you gain new opinions, you may feel like, oh yeah, that opinion is true.
That's true. However, I think not a lot of people think that way. That's why we're discussing the topic about effective communication. Here's the thing though. I think it's so funny that I find it so like when I was thinking about this topic, it's so funny how a lot of people they think that wow, effective communication that's so serious. But if you think about it in details, how many times have we communicate with people that we think are effective but it's actually not? Because if you think about it, people they understand and retrieve information the way they understand it. So it doesn't necessarily mean if you say something, they understand and get the point, like you said.
Of course, there's always times when communication becomes not effective. I mean, like where the other people does not understand about what you're talking about, and of course, being even myself becoming a president, being in an organization, it always occur of having ineffective communication where other people do not understand. Yeah, but then I guess it also depends on other people. The other people need to speak up and say that yeah, maybe ask like what are you talking about? Can you repeat yourself? Because if it's only on my side, I wouldn't know that that person does not understand what I'm talking about.
So do you think you've personally achieved a lot of effective communication?
I think half half. So far, I think I have a quite effective communication with my team.
Good.
How about you?
Actually, this is something that I have been contemplating on, if that makes any sense, because I think that I've done a lot of things in the past that I think was effective communication that turns out not to be effective communication.
Ooh, can you give some examples of it?
Well, I'm kind of embarrassed. I feel like my examples are very like
In general,
in general.
yeah.
But if it's in general, it's not fun. It's not what they subscribe to the content.
Then
I think I think sometimes when it comes to other people, like our relationship with so one of our co-founder, she is in charge of communicating with our media partners and etc. And I think there sometimes there are times where we have a lot of miscommunication just because the two of us we communicate in such a different language. And what that means is not like I communicate in English and she communicates in Mandarin. I mean like the way we speak is such a different manner. And I think sometimes I find her to be a bit too nice in the way she speaks, and that often doesn't really show the point of the conversation. What do you think about it? Like, if you're too nice when you speak, sometimes there's no point in the conversation.
yeah, actually, it's also depend on who are you speaking with. Whether
Yeah.
you would need to be, whether you need to be go hard on them or
Oh, like you have to be
with
like
emotions.
to the point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And what do you think about it?
I think if it's about work related, you would need to go hard on them
yeah, I also find it like a bit, you know how sometimes people say, oh, like, talking is just talking, right? I think communication and talking is such different things. Because if you communicate, you're trying to get a point out of something, right? Talking is just speaking in general without really trying to reach to a certain point that has to be emphasized. So I think communicating when it comes to work, it has to be a bit more subtle. It has to be more like what she said, you have to go hard on your point. And then communicating in actually no, communicating in friendship too though.
But then in friendship, you can put in more emotional words lah. You doesn't have
Oh,
to
that's true.
direct to be direct about like, hey, you have to do this. I want this. You can put more emotional words in terms of friendship.
I think I should work on that.
Yeah, I think you should. I think you shouldn't be too formal in terms of texting your teachers or your close friends.
No, I think it kind of depends on the person you're talking about too. Because my sister actually, this is a little bit of sharing for you guys and Natasha. I told Natasha this before. I have an older sister. Her name is Yossi, and she's a very smart, intelligent, independent woman. She's all those positive description above, but I think because she's a very highly educated woman, she tends to really, she's such a doer. Like in terms in the way she thinks and speak, it really shows how what a thinker she is. You know what I mean? That so I think back then when I was this little fragile child who is like really basically speaking off my thoughts and my emotion, she would we wouldn't connect in that way. And I think we're still trying to reconcile that connection until now. But at the same time, I think it's such a, like things like that, I think it just comes with personality too at the same time. I told you this story before, right?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. What do you think about it?
Sometimes I don't think that's quite effective because, okay, you have these thoughts, but maybe your thoughts is not that right.
What does that mean?
Like, maybe other people thoughts is actually correct, but then you're just hard-headed and you're like, no, 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 no. My opinion, my thought is right. And not opening to other people opinion. So just like your pave wave is just straight line. You just want to follow your thoughts and thoughts and thoughts.
But I think that works the same way though, because if you're too emotional, like not saying that it's bad, I'm saying that sometimes I think if you speak just based on your emotion, it can also make your arguments weak because you're basically just saying, oh, this is how I feel. But the point is, you have to be valid with the way you feel about something, right?
Yeah. Of course you can't just think with your emotion because like if you just thought about your emotion, if you're angry, then you just follow your emotion. No, you're wrong because I'm angry. But then later when you think about it
very
again,
valid.
later when you think back again, it's like, oh shit, I shouldn't be angry about it. Because like when you think about it again, maybe what she says is right, what he says is right. That's why it's not that good to speak when you're very in an emotion state, whether you're sad or angry, because your feeling will drive what you think.
Oh, because you're overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Totally
you'll
understand.
be like, because of your angry feeling, you just say whatever your head say, whether it's true or not. If you're sad, you just say whatever is true or not. So yeah, you have to, I guess, calm down, then combine your emotion with your thinking and think twice whether it's actually a good thing or a bad
But
thing.
yeah, I agree. I think you know what. Now that you've mentioned that about the calm down thing, I actually kind of struggled with it back then. Like I used to think that. Here's the thing. Like I think personally, like my personality is just very black and white. So I think I struggle so much finding like being in the gray area is a little bit like uncomfortable for me. So I think like I have to be able to reconnect the two things, being sensible, and emotional all at the same time. You know what? Now that we're talking about it, not I think it's a life skill that takes a lot of time to learn. What do you think?
Yeah, it's not easy to be able to filter things out, to be able to filter your emotion out. Of course, like, because if you're angry, your mind is only like, okay, I'm mad with this person. It's very hard to like calm your emotion down. It takes practice and patience. It's very difficult if you do not have patience. That's what I think, personally.
I do think patience is a big key aspect for effective communication.
Yeah, I think it does.
I also think like you know how sometimes we think in terms of like friendship and getting to know someone well. Like if you know the person really well, it's kind of easier to talk to them rather than you don't know the person.
Yeah, because if you do not know the person, it tends to get awkward.
Really?
For me, I mean, maybe you're an extrovert, right? So you can talk way easily, but then, me being an introvert, it's quite difficult lah. Like, okay, I met a new person, we talk, but then, uh, if there's no conversation going on, or because I did not know the person, right, I felt awkward around them.
Can you give me an example of you when you meet someone new and you wanna communicate effectively, but then it didn't end up going in the way that you expected?
I guess it also depends on who the person you're talking with. If the other person is also an introvert and I'm an introvert and no one wanted to continue or start the conversation, of course it won't end up with an effective communication, since both of us were just like not going to open up to each other. But then if you talk to a more extrovert person where they're willing to open up and help you to carry the conversation, and for an introvert person, I think that would make the communication smoother because you feel more comfortable around them and to continue the talk to, which may result into a better effective communication compared to talking with an introvert.
What about like a real life example, the one that you personally experienced?
Talking with a person who doesn't have the same habits or common ground with me, like for example, I love to watch K-dramas or anime. Talking to a person who doesn't like the same thing is quite more difficult for me. Since for me, it's more easier to share with people who have the same habit. I mean, same,
Share common ground.
yeah, share common grounds. You know, there's actually some miscommunication that I've experienced myself. And actually, since every time miscommunication happens through text.
Oh, I hate miscommunication through text.
Yeah.
It bothers me so much.
So you experienced it before, right? A lot of times.
100%. Speak
Yeah.
more.
When a miscommunication happened through text, maybe some solution that could be taken is like call them, talk through phone, or provide some images. For example, if the miscommunication is about editing
Oh
of a
God.
post,
This is us with Ada.
yeah,
This is us with work.
it's either you call them or you provide some example through pictures, or yeah, you draw yourself, because if it's very difficult to help editing process through chats, because like some in terms of creativity, every people have different opinions.
I think we create. Yeah, that's true. And also, I think like media partner stuff that we normally talk about. I also think that one should be through phone other than through chat. Because I think I agree with what you said about like every single person have a different point of creativity. Actually, I want to elaborate on that. Back then, we used to have this other before uh, our production. I was working with like a lot of other people for other projects, and I think I find I find it interesting how this other person I'm talking about has such a different perspective of creativity. So sometimes I think even if majority, like literally, me and these other group of people, we have like the same concept of creativity, but other people, the opposing person that we're talking to, has such a different perspective of creativity. So when the two concepts are communicated, they clash. You know, so I think it's important for I think creativity itself to be verbally communicated. Do you think, especially with a project like Ada, like the four of us, we have weekly meetings, and I think to make it effective, we have to really think about what our individual perspective of creativity is.
Yeah, true.
We talked about effective communication and this topic of being too emotional or being a lot more thinking than emotion. What do you think from your personal experience and your personal life experience are three tips that you would give other people to communicate effectively? 3 points.
First of all, don't be too emotional. Like, don't put your too much of your emotions in talkings, because emotions will drive your answer, whether it's true or not. Second, be patient. I mean, like, don't mind. You have to be willing to repeat yourself if other people do not understand your points. It could be in terms of another words, or yeah, just repeat yourself if that person asks you to repeat yourself. While I think about it, how about you, Esther? What are the three things that you think can help?
Three things. I think number one is I think it's important for you to know who you're speaking to. Do you think so?
Yeah,
Like
true.
that makes a big difference. Like if you're speaking to a friend, the way I speak to you and the way I speak to my mom or like my teacher, my professor or anything, it's like such a different tone. So identify who you're speaking to because if you are able to do that, you're able to set the tone of the communication. Right, Nat?
Mm.
Number two, I think what Nat say about patient is also true. I think it's not about the matter of it's not really a lot on like the matter of being patient. I think it's about being considerate. If you're and again like all these three things that I'm trying to make a point of, it relates with each other. Because if you know the person you're talking to, then you have a level of consideration that you can put in, right? So I think just being considerate of the other person's background, the other person's knowledge, and all those things, taking those things into consideration, like the word considerate, you'll be able to have a more effective communication. And I think number three, if you were to speak with someone, no matter what sort of background or other things that you've considered in the second point, I think it's important to still have the heart to learn, right?
Yeah,
I
true.
think I'm gonna be very honest, especially number three is a little bit hard for me and I'm sure for everybody, because I think as humans we're like it's a default setting to think what we think is right or what we think is the fact of the matter. But like the fact of the matter is that we can only acquire so much knowledge to know about so many things and we could still be wrong about something that we think about. So I think to be able to achieve effective communication, I would say know who you're talking to set the tone. Number two, be considerate. And number three, have the ears to listen and the heart to learn.
Mm.
That's for my part.
I'll add on to my points. To have an effective communication, I think you also need to be open-minded.
Yeah, hard to learn.
Yeah, you have to be open-minded. You have to not just listen to others to just reply what they want to say, but instead you have to listen to understand what they actually want to say, and not just you just listen and because you just wanted to reply them. You get what I mean?
Yeah, like you want to take into consideration the words, right?
Yeah.
You want to think about it so you can give the proper, sensible reply.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. I also think that, you know how sometimes, like, when people send you long texts, and then you're like, hey, can I reply later? Because you need time to think about it.
Yeah, true. I think long text is very tiring because
I do send them
like
notes.
there's a lot of things that you need to process
That's true.
in that long text. So I
I
think
think it's needed too, though, sometimes.
I mean, yeah, to a person who
I mean, if you're working,
yeah,
it's like
when you're
different.
working and you do not know the person, you can't keep on texting them like one line, one line, one
We
line.
do it all the time for work, so.
It becomes a spam text. So yeah, you just have to get used to long texts and takes time to understand what they're trying to say.
Yeah, I agree with what you have to say. To wrap up the topic of effective communication, you guys can go ahead to Ada Digital Productions Instagram. It's at ADA Digital Production. Basically, you guys can go ahead to our Instagram and check our bio. We have our business inquiries. You can reach us through email or DM, our podcast, our Spotify, Anchor, and other platforms.
Anyways, yeah. Thank you for listening to our podcast episode 2. Please stay tuned to our other episodes that will be coming up soon. And do DM us if you have any topics that you're interested in us to talk about.